Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on supporting electric vehicle adoptions for businesses. This webinar is hosted by Fairfax County's Green Business Partners, a program of the Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination. My name is Stephanie Cadena, and I'm the program manager for Green Business Partners. Today, we're going to hear from industry leaders about trends in the electric vehicle or EV market. They're going to address common myths and fact-check current perceptions around EVs and also share their insights for accelerating EVs and their infrastructure for businesses. And before we dive in, we're going to highlight the Green Business Partners program, share briefly on the county's electric vehicle initiatives, and then we'll be turning things over to Eric Plapper from Stantec, who will serve as the moderator for today and introduce our panelists. I want to take a moment to recognize the team who helped set up today's event from OEEC, Julie Gurney, John Silcox, Emily Bohr, and Ely Law, and also to the Stantec team, including John Bachman, Eric Plapper, and our panelists, who you'll hear from more in a moment. We do have a few housekeeping items here to note. All attendee microphones and cameras will remain off. And this webinar is being recorded. We will be sending a link to the recording and the presentation slides for all attendees after the meeting, and this will also be posted on our Green Business Partners webpage. And for any questions, you can submit those through the chat function at the top of your screen throughout the presentation or during the Q&A portion following the presentations. Next slide. So Green Business Partners is continuing to grow. We now have almost 60 partners in the program. And for those that are hearing about us for the first time, I encourage you to check us out on our webpage for additional information, including to submit your participation form for your business. This is a free Fairfax County recognition program that showcases businesses' sustainability practices and provides resources for them to enhance their climate-friendly actions. GBP has a vision of creating a thriving and resilient business community, one that works to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and promotes sustainability for a healthy and prosperous Fairfax County. And we do this by supporting businesses in the county to create a carbon neutral economy. That is through recognition, events, sharing resources and benefits, through peer-to-peer networking, technical resources, and learning opportunities to advance green practices. So now I'm going to hand it over to Julie to share on one of our county initiatives that relates to today's session.
Hello. Hello. My name is Julie Gurney, and I am with the Office of Environmental and Energy Coordination. And I'm just going to share a little bit about what Fairfax County is doing. So we are focused on promoting the adoption of electric vehicles to meet the emission reduction goals as outlined in the community-wide energy and climate action plan and the county's operational energy strategy. So this plan is going to include two components. The first component is a transition plan for the county's vehicle fleet. Our OES has a target for all county vehicles to transition to electric or non-carbon emitting by 2035. We also have a community EV readiness plan, and the county aims for 15% of all light-duty vehicle registrations to be electric by 2030. So this is up from our current 3% of electric vehicles. And as we move forward with this plan, Fairfax County will be looking for opportunities to expand public charging infrastructure throughout the county. And some of the strategies for increasing infrastructure may include public-private partnerships and incentives for the private sector to install charging stations. So businesses could support charging for visitors and residents in Fairfax County. We will be holding a public meeting in early August to share more information about the plan, or you can visit our Fairfax County public input page to see more about this strategy. I'm going to turn it back over to Stephanie to introduce our panelists.
Yes, and again, for any questions, you can post those through the chat throughout these presentations or hold those for the Q&A portion. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, Eric, who will provide an overview of today's session and also introduce our speakers.
Thanks, Stephanie. Hi, everyone. My name is Eric Plapper. I am a principal in Stantec's Smarter Mobility Group. I lead our EV planning practice, so most of my work focuses on working with communities to help them understand where and how to build charging. I also work with both public and private fleet clients to plan their transition to zero emissions vehicles. And I'm going to let the other speakers introduce themselves in the order that you see them here.
Hi, my name is Andy Fraser. I'm with eMotion. Our job at eMotion is to educate the public, that's a private sector, including dealerships, businesses, and individuals, on why EVs are almost always a better solution for them.
Hi, nice to meet everyone. My name is Logan Bird. I'm the COO of EV Plus, and we're a zero CapEx turnkey solution for level 2 charging, focused on multifamily hotels and office. So, and we currently have several projects in Fairfax County, all over DC, Virginia, and Maryland, as well as across the country.
And Sajith?
Sorry, yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Sajith Kumar. I'm the founder and CEO of Chargerzilla. We are a community-based peer-to-peer EV charger sharing network where homeowners, property owners can rent out their charger and to the EV owners out there. And we are supported by TechStar, JP Morgan, and we are partnering with Fairfax County to enable more EV charging stations in their county.
Great. Thank you, everyone. So just a quick rundown of what we'll be discussing today. I will provide a brief overview of just where the EV industry stands today and give some basic definitions just so we're all on the same page. Then Logan and Sajith are going to talk about good reasons to provide charging to customers as well as employees. We will also talk about why to consider an EV fleet, and Andy will be speaking to that. And finally, we will leave plenty of time at the end for questions and answers and encourage you to put them into the chat as we go. And so just to start with some fairly basic definitions, there is a spectrum of types of vehicles that include battery technology. On the left here, you see, a traditional hybrid vehicle. It has a gas tank. It does not plug in, and it is recharged primarily through braking. And so the engine and the motors operate together, sometimes independently. The evolution of this then was the plug-in hybrid electric. Still has a gas tank, but now it has a ability to plug into a wall and charge, and so it can drive a certain distance on electric power and then operate on gasoline. And then finally, battery electric, no gas tank, only plugs into the wall, only operates as an EV. When the battery runs out, the car stops. So on the infrastructure side, we have 3 types of charging. And so level 1 charging is basically using a standard outlet to charge your vehicle. Recharge time on this is quite long. 20 plus hours for a typical vehicle. Use case would be home charging primarily, but the benefit is that it is free. Level 2, this would require installation of a special wall charger and electrical equipment in your house. It shortens the recharge time down to 5 to 6 hours. And potential use cases might be home, destination charging, maybe at work. And then finally, DC fast charging, direct current fast charging. This requires a relatively significant investment, but it cuts the charge time down significantly. The primary use case here is really similar to a gas station and focused on long distance corridors. And so let's talk first about why a business might want to provide charging. And as we go through the webinar, we've structured this around some of the common misperceptions we hear about EVs. And this is one I hear a lot, actually, that EV sales are declining. But when you look at the global trends, the year-over-year adoption really continues to increase. You see here that we're including both battery electric as well as plug-in hybrid. You also see an FCEV there, and that is referring to fuel cell vehicles that are powered by hydrogen. And then even when we look within the United States, these trends remain true. So the growth rate's a little bit slower, but we're still seeing year-over-year growth. And obviously the availability of purchase incentives may impact this. But as we'll discuss later, EVs are also becoming more affordable over time. So just to frame it relatively simply, why a business might want to provide EV charging. EV owners operate a little differently than people who drive gasoline vehicles. They like to top their vehicles up throughout the day. They may not have charging at home. And so the ability to provide it to customers can really help attract and retain them. And there may also be some opportunities to earn revenue from it. And shortly, Sajith and Logan are going to discuss some of the different business models to make this happen. Chargers could also support your own fleet, and Andy and I will discuss later what some of those benefits look like. Similar to customers, charging for employees could also be a good attraction tool, especially if employees don't have access to charging at home. And then finally, it might be a good way to help your business meet its environmental goals. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Logan, and he's going to discuss his approach.
Hey, thanks a lot for the introduction. That was great. Hopefully everybody is better acclimated to the EVs and EV charging infrastructure. So as mentioned, I work for a company called EV Plus. We're installing all over the country, and we're a zero CapEx turnkey solution. So we're fully outsourced for property owners. Our clients tend to own hotels, apartment buildings, offices. We're in some, healthcare centers, things like that. But when I say outsourced, it's fully outsourced for the property owner. We handle everything related to the permitting, utility coordination, charger installation. Once they're installed, we have the hardware, software, 24/7 customer service, maintenance. If the charger's outdated, we'll handle all that. So, once we sign on with a client, and get an overview of their property and get introduced and some knowledge transfer, the property owners, it's very hands off for the property owner, and we handle everything related to it. So next slide. So these are some brands that we're working with. Like I said, we have properties in Fairfax County, all over East Coast, West Coast, because we're working with asset managers, property owners, and they want a solution that'll handle all of their properties. So, they may own properties in California, they may be heavily focused in Virginia, but wherever they're focused, we want to be their EV charging solution. So, next slide. So we have just a quick comment on that. We have a ton of installation partners. So we're, we put everything together, we handle it, and then, we have training programs for all of our installation partners, and we manage all the installation partners. So, if you break down if you want to do a basic litmus test on EV enablement, if you're a property owner and you're trying to figure out, should I do EV charging? I see some EVs around. What kind of benefit would it be? So if you break it down from hotels, multifamily, office, industrial, education, we've been in this space for a while. This is what we see. It's not an exact science, but this is what we see as upsides for hotels. It's significant. Multifamily, significant. Office, that's minimal. Indirect upside in hotels and multifamily, we see occupancy rates increasing because they have that amenity. It's a search filter for hotels on Priceline and other search things. So EV charging is important in those types of properties. System size, what we're seeing at most of our properties, your typical hotel and multifamily, it's 2 to 4 chargers. As you get into industrial, education, and retail, it does increase. But most of our projects, if we're at a hotel, we're at an office, most of our projects are 4 to 6 chargers. Some could be higher. When you get into like the EV, is it is this going to be a massive revenue stream for you? When I'm talking level 2 charging, we're not putting, we're not working with service centers on corridors and things like that. So, there is charging revenue that you'll capture if you wanted to go out and fully, hey, I'm going to go buy this system. But it's minimal for the most part. The charging revenue that the chargers alone, is it a business? If you own an office and a hotel, is it worth you just going out and investing in charging because you want to get the revenue from the charging? It's a case by case business, but for the most part, this isn't going to be a massive revenue stream for you as a property owner. But it is from an amenity side and an upside. It is significant for most of these properties. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, so this is just some information we captured around hotels that 78%, so 75 greater than three out of 4 of guests at hotels think that on-site chargers is important. So as mentioned before, they can filter by chargers. We've done surveys. We have a lot of data that shows, you're going to sell more room nights when you're talking hotels if you have chargers, than if you didn't have chargers. Next slide. So this is some other data we have from property types at hotels. This is the data I mentioned. The incremental, the amenity it provides for hotel owners is significant. So this is, if you're running a hotel, 125, 150 keys. These are the numbers you can see. You can start with, upscale, luxury, upper mid-scale, and you're selling, you're selling more room nights because you have EV chargers on site, and that's what we see, and that's why the biggest sector for us is hotels. Office is big for us as well as multifamily, but office, in many cases, office isn't their primary source of charging. Home tends to be their primary source. So that's where we focus, and that's where we've seen made a lot of headway. Hotels, multifamily. Next slide. Oh, so I think that's the last slide for me. So I appreciate everybody's time. We're looking forward to partnering with Fairfax County, partnering with property owners in the area, getting more chargers in the ground. I love getting it's an amenity people enjoy having. They do get used. It adds a lot of value to the properties, and for me, I love seeing chargers, getting them installed, and bringing that amenity to the property owners. So thank you everyone for your time.
Great, Sajid, I believe you're up.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Logan, everyone. Thank you, audience who are listening to this. At present, there is always a myth that the charging stations are rare. Where can we find charging? So this is we are giving some more insight into this number of charging stations. We currently have US has around 250,000 charging stations across the United States. That include public charging stations and as well as stations that is located in the and for the fleet and private stations. So many EV drivers just don't know where to find them. So it's not a supply problem; it's a visibility problem. So the real issue is the charging deserts in certain areas. We agree, but urban centers have good coverage, but suburbs areas, underserved communities may have some infrastructure that is, same like applies to even gas stations. You may not find a gas station when you're in the countryside and you have to drive far. However, this is where we are. Chargerzilla is helping fill this gap by enabling any home or businesses, any property owners in the area to become a charging station operator. So EV charging, to say that EV charging is just about public charging networks. Most EV charging happens at homes, apartments, workplaces, hotels, parking garages, and not like the gas stations where it is only dedicated. So Chargerzilla, we are unlocking the thousands of these hidden chargers by making them publicly bookable. So this is the map of the Fairfax County. At present, these are locations are public charging stations provided by various EV charging providers, and it's been taken from Chargerzilla map. Actually, if you can also go to the website and also mobile app and find the charging stations in any area. We display charging station 250,000 charging stations from 75 EV charging networks, including Tesla superchargers. So our main intention is to reduce the charging anxiety. Not only we help homeowners, property owners to rent out their chargers. So we built a software platform where every property owner can put a charger, and in 3 easy steps, they are online and are visible to the any EV owners out there. So you can see that map on the right side. There is a home already in our platform network who is sharing their charger through Chargerzilla, which is with whom they are getting a lot of bookings, and people they are monetizing their charger at present. So Chargerzilla is in the like Airbnb for EV chargers. We can say that we let property owners list their chargers and earn income. So creating a community-powered network. So they all come under the Chargerzilla network. Every host adds one or more charging points where none existed before. So this will really, we are also providing the tools and partnerships to help businesses, landlords, and homeowners install and monetize chargers and existing charging stations. They can also get a return on investment when they rent out. So, example, a EV host renting for $10 per hour. For 80 hours a week, they can generate up to $30,000 in income, passive income. You can say that. So we provide a software platform where in mobile app and as well as web, and they can also do scheduled planning when we are driving from example from Fairfax County to Boston, and you can filter charging stations located at hotels and coffee shops. Not only that, homes also where you can relax, watch Netflix or use their Wi-Fi, things like that. We can go to next slide. So this is where we are coming up with a community-based solution where we have thousands of homeowners already across the nation. We are building our footprint in the Fairfax County as well. There are a lot of homeowners in our listing going through the vetting process to be a host. So we are completely a community-based solution. So our model will unlock. There are example estimated to be like 5 million charging stations located at private properties. That includes homes and as well as small businesses where they would like to generate, where they can rent out to the people. So we are unlocking the potential that all the 5 million can be available. So that will drastically reduce the charging anxiety. That increases, example, like from 250,000 public charging stations plus adding 5 million. Ideally, if we meet the target, there is a lot of charging stations. That's more than we count around more than 30 times more than gas stations across the United States and also in Canada. So we are unlocking the potential. Or maybe so it will increase when more charging stations, especially people living in the multi-family properties. Or commuting to work and maybe workplace don't have a charger, they can go to next neighborhood home or business where they have a charger listed in our platform. They can reserve a charging stations. This is not only that helpful for very much in the ride hailing industry, Uber, Lyft drivers. They can also find charging and reserve a charging session through our platform. So we we provide public chargers as well as private chargers as well as a booking platform, which reduces the charging anxiety, providing most number of charging stations using a platform. So yeah, we can go to the next slide. So then they say that when we comes to put a charger on our home, you don't need to own an EV even. Call an electrician, put a charger and rent through Chargerzilla. And then comes to how much it costs electricity, how much, what are the other estimates. So we have a provided map of location. Example, if it is in Virginia, the electricity rates are, you can see that around between 10 cents to 12 cents. Depends on the area. And not only that, it is much cheaper sometimes in the off-peak hours. You can charge your car, and not only that, you can also rent out your charger in the driveway. Somebody's charging. So it is like 10 kilowatt hour charger you are renting for 11 cents. So 11 into 10 is like $1.10 for an hour of charging. But you are renting for 15 or 20 or 10, depends on the time. So there's a lot of, the cost is very minimal basically. other than the initial cost of installing and the cost of buying an EV charging equipment. This is the rough map we provide. Subject to change, electricity companies can increase the price, but this is the latest and greatest as of today. We are providing that. Yeah. So Chargerzilla is one of the solutions that help reduce charging anxiety and increase the number of charging sessions, and is an ideal community-powered EV charging network.
Great, thanks, Ajith. We're gonna switch topics now and talk about considerations for EV fleets. And so this third one is one I also hear a lot, that EVs have higher emissions than internal combustion engines once you account for the grid itself. And it is true, the carbon intensity of a grid certainly impacts what the emissions reduction is, but EVs actually have a huge advantage right off the bat that makes them pretty universally more efficient. And this is still true even if you account for some of the emissions associated with manufacturing and disposal. But the typical internal combustion engine really only sends 16 to 25% of its power to the wheels. In fact, the most thermally efficient engine that exists only sends 40%. And so they end up losing a lot of their energy in the combustion process, sending power to the wheels, use of auxiliary devices, and EVs compensate for this. Much more efficient at sending power to the wheels. They recoup a lot of the power loss through regenerative braking. And so even in West Virginia, which has the most carbon intensive grid, EVs still end up having lower emissions. I think another misnomer that's out there, most people need very little range to actually serve their daily needs. So, we hear a lot of talk of the 300, 400, 500 plus mile range EVs at the high end of the luxury market, but most people only drive 40 or 50 miles a day. And so even if you went out and bought a first generation Nissan Leaf, one of the lowest capacity batteries out there, it would still serve the needs of most people. And so what this means is if you're a 2-car household, typical commuting patterns, you have the ability to charge at home, making one of your vehicles either an EV or a plug-in hybrid is really a no-brainer. I also hear a lot that EVs are very expensive, and it is true that as the industry was starting, it tended to be concentrated at the luxury end of the spectrum. But we've actually seen a pretty significant drop in battery prices, even from 2023 to 2024, a 20% drop. There's more competition than ever in the space. Multiple automakers have competing models within the same segment. And the used market is also proliferating. In fact, when I was putting this slide deck together, I took a look, and there are around 300 used electric vehicles and plug-in hybrids in Fairfax County listed for under $20,000. And so we're really starting to see the market start to reach parity with the cost of internal combustion engines, and that is expected to happen in the next couple of years. Of course, purchase cost is not the only consideration if you're buying a vehicle. When you look at the total cost of ownership, EVs are often much less expensive. So, this example here, we're just looking at a typical 7-year, 12,000 mile per year ownership cycle. And you can see the EV is actually 20% less expensive to own. Much lower fuel costs, much lower maintenance costs. The typical internal combustion engine vehicle might have 2,000 moving parts, whereas an EV only has 20. And even if I remove federal incentives from the equation, you'll see here the total cost of ownership is still slightly less for the EV. And this math, I think, is really going to change as adoption increases and as we see that cost parity start to happen. And so I'm going to turn it over to Andy, and he's going to get into some more of the details of the economics of adding an EV to your fleet.
Hello. Yeah, what I wanted to start with, how much actually you would save if you're charging, especially a fleet charging in the office, where you're going to be paying a lot less for energy than you would be paying for fueling your gas vehicle. So from this slide here, we're just going to talk about energy. Here's your standard. This is based on like a standard F-150 gas truck versus an F-150 electric truck. So every time you fuel that tank and go 300 miles, you're going to pay $17 in electric for an EV. When you do that with a gas F-150 option, you're going to do $60. So every time you do that, you can see that $43 just floating away. It really makes a difference. And you can go on to the next slide, Eric. One of the things that I like to say is, let's flip the script. Everybody, likes to talk about why all you have to do to give up to go to an EV, but what I want to talk about is some of the things that you do gain. And one of the things is, the inconvenience of going to a gas station. Yeah, that can be a convenience, but it also can be an inconvenience. All of your fleet trucks or your home trucks or cars or whatever your vehicles need to be inspected by the emissions for emissions every couple of years. And that's just a hassle. You don't have to do that with an EV. You can also preheat your vehicle in a garage or air condition, cool it off in a garage without any worry about anyone dying from carbon monoxide poisoning. You don't have to worry about your catalytic converter being stolen. I know that was a big thing. It's still happening during COVID. It happened a lot too. But one of the biggest things is the maintenance. There's no more oil changes, no more timing chains, transmissions, fuel pumps, spark plugs are a thing of the past. And then a lot of cars, what's that noise? I like that part there is, you hear the noise and you start to worry about your car. You hear this noise. That really doesn't happen with an EV. Some of the other benefits is they're just so much easier to drive. They're quiet. When you need to accelerate, there's instant acceleration. And going back to another benefit is if you're doing this with a commercial fleet here and you're leasing, that all that maintenance cost that I mentioned earlier, I mean, really, you lease over 2 to 5 year period, you're generally going to have no maintenance costs at all. And not only so maybe you pay a tiny bit up front more with incentives. You may not even be paying that much up front more for the vehicle, but you're going to save so much in maintenance. And not only that is maintenance a cost to you, but it's a cost in downtime with your vehicle. So I think that's pretty important to understand. Can you go on to the next slide, please? We talked about Eric talked a little bit about different levels of charging, right? And I like to call level 1 is essentially a destination, your office or home, and also level 2 being that too. But what you get in terms of charging is, if you just are using a regular outlet and you're just plugging into the wall, you're recovering 3 to 4 miles per hour. That means that overnight you're going to get 30 to 50 miles if you're charging it over a night. And the average American drives 37 miles on a day for a commute. Now, this is different for a fleet. It depends on your fleet and what you're going to be using. But if you do invest in the infrastructure and install a level 2, a destination charger at your location, you're going to wake up every morning, you're going to get a full charge over the night. And then if you take it to a level 3 charging station, if you're doing a lot of traveling and it happens to be during the day, and this is for more long distance, this wouldn't be local, you would go to a DC fast charger, and typically 15 to 40 minutes will get you up to a full charge. Next slide, please. And the other, we're talking about how much you save in cost. So level 1, level 2, and level 3, you do pay for speed, but in a commercial fleet, hopefully you're charging in the office where you're paying that $9 to $19. And in terms of the gas or internal gas combustion diesel, you're paying $30 to $48. Now these are based on low cost. It's $2.50 per gallon that's what the 30 is. But you could be paying a lot more. So next slide, please. There is a tax credit at this time, and those areas that you see in green and that yellow, I guess tan color, are areas where there's a 30% commercial and residential EV tax credit for installing electric charging equipment. To find out if your exact location is, if that's available for your location, you have to go to the website. There's a website down on the bottom right there, and you get this on the slide deck later, that will determine if your location does qualify for that 30% tax credit, and that's a huge thing. It can really benefit you. Next slide, please. We're good.
All right. Yeah, I think that is the end of our slides. Let's turn it over now to question and answer. And Julie and John, I'm going to ask you to help facilitate those.
Hello, we do have a question in the Q&A, and I think several of you could be able to help answer this. The question is, would you recommend switching to an EV fleet all at once?
Oh, that's a good question. Andy, do you want to maybe take a stab at that, and then the rest of us can fill in some color?
I would not. I think it's a good idea, but you're going to want to have a transition. And I'm not an expert in installing these. So I'll let the other panelists talk about it a little more.
Sure. I'll just add a few thoughts as well. I think, one of the challenges in a fleet transition is that not every use case currently has a EV equivalent, and so there might be certain operating parameters or specialized vehicles that just aren't going to make sense on the front end for a fleet transition. And so when we work with clients on their fleet transition plan, it's almost always a time-phased approach where you start with the low-hanging fruit and you push the harder use cases out further into the future to let the market availability catch up. And Logan and Sajith, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this from the infrastructure build-out perspective.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, depending on how large the fleet is and what you're looking to do, your power requirements can be pretty significant. So that'll be your biggest roadblock you're running into. Power requirements, but that's just what I've seen working with utilities. Getting new power and working through that can take up to a year. So as you transition on, you can get that sort of in the works, and then as you transition on, by the time you get the power, you'll have vehicles.
Yeah, I would also reiterate, if I could jump in real quick, how important it is to at least get started, because there are more and more EV models coming into the market, and there are less and less gas and diesel market vehicles coming into the market, and it is changing, and there's no stopping it. It's going to happen. 10 years from now, we're going to have a very, very different conversation.
Yeah, I think also understanding, you can have a lot of vehicles, but if you're an 8 to 5 operation, you have 16 hours to get charged. That's a lot different than if you're running from 8 a.m. to midnight. So understanding your operation and what's happening, that'll have a big impact on it, because a 15-hour charge cycle is much different than a 6 or 7 hour.
Absolutely. We've got another one here in the chat. Can a business in Fairfax County install EV chargers with a company like Logan's and then rent out the chargers by the hour with a company like Sajith's? I'm going to give both of you the chance to answer that, and then there's a follow-up question I want to add as well.
Yeah, I can. I'll answer that. Yeah, so definitely. So when we install chargers, most of the properties that we install at, multifamily is a little bit different. They don't want strangers, and it doesn't make sense for outsiders to come onto the property. But yeah, most property owners, they want to bring, people to their properties. So they would be fine with a program like Sajid's, where, it's, a charge sharing program, especially hotels. And from our standpoint, we want to drive utilization to the chargers. And when we go in and from a program standpoint, we're on the hook to add more chargers as the chargers are more utilized. So we might install 4 chargers on day 1 and the property just blows it out of the water and they want more and the utilization is really high. We're happy. We'll go add 50 chargers there. As long as the utilization dictates. So yeah, no, Sajid and I have actually talked about it a little bit. And yeah, they're not mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I can add, Logan, what mentioned is very accurate. The businesses can install, and not only that, for their customers. And it may be underutilized, and the business may be thinking that, hey, would like to have more, return on investment for this. So return on investment can come using our Chargerzilla platform. They can rent it through our platform. It is bringing traffic to the station. Example, we have a customer in Connecticut, and he put 2 chargers at his restaurant, and they have people coming to charge. Not only that, they are having a coffee and having a pizza when the car is charging. This is really helpful for the business. So not only the money they are getting from the EV station and as well as, but they are getting additional revenue from the business they are, they are in. For example, there is a farm owner in Tennessee. He's running his charger and he put 2 chargers, and he's getting a lot of traffic from the highway traffic from the Tesla and all. They are coming and they are charging, and as well as they are buying from farm produce like tomatoes and carrots and all. So this is additional revenue. So it is helping in the businesses to boost their business revenue, not only from charging at the same time, from their core business what they are. So, and especially many people using our platform, using our mobile app, you can find charging stations located at hotels. So will you be comfortable staying in a hotel that has a charger, and you can reserve a charging station through our platform. And when your car is there, when you are at checking time, most of the hotels are like 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. When you go there, the charger is ready. You put the car in the charge, and you go to your room and sleep. And so it is driving traffic to the hotel. And not only that, it's beneficial for the EV owner that they don't need to go, they drive 200 miles and then they're going outside to looking for a public charger. So we are providing an amenity to the customer, as well as it's really helping for the customer too, and to the community. So that's what Chargerzilla is helping actually in this case.
Thank you both. And then I have a related follow-up question. If a business were to use that model, how would they give first dibs to their own customers? So for example, a hotel prioritizing its guests over, someone else from, another member of the public driving up and using the station.
I can take this question. Definitely, the hotel customers, they can use a code, and whoever reserved a charger, and they can, and whenever they are reserving, they can get a code, and they can use that code when they are reserving the charger. So then, but at the same time, they can also look through the availability. If it is reserved earlier, definitely, it can be, he can still charge. He can reserve a charge session after the initial charging session. Still, hotels have the full control, and they can block the calendar from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock to their customers, and then they can open it up for the other customers. Or morning time, people are leaving, they can put like 10 to 11, they can set their own availability in the calendar. So definitely, they can prioritize their customers. This platform.
Great. Logan, any thoughts you want to add to that?
No, I think Sajid's covered it. Sorry.
Perfect. Okay.
There's another question in the chat.
Yep.
And that is,
yes.
How does EV charging integrate with smart grid or solar systems?
Oh, good question. Yeah. Logan, how about you
I can answer,
talk about that from the grid to the infrastructure perspective, and then maybe Andy from the fleet perspective?
Yeah, so definitely solar and battery is going to help alleviate pressure on, the load. So if somebody has solar or they're doing a battery, when we work with utilities, we're able to put actually more chargers in because we have more capacity from a power standpoint. Yeah, so certainly batteries, help alleviate peak demand. So we can pull from a battery during the day if you have peak demand chargers. In hotels and multifamily, most of the charging is done at night, so it doesn't really, come into play as much. In offices, we have a property in New York where we utilize the battery. They have a 250 kilowatt battery. We'll utilize that battery during the day for charging at the office. But yeah, it's definitely going to increase this, your available power at your property, and then everything integrates. If you have a smart meter and system, you can, we'll be able to pull utilization data. So if we put chargers on your property within the first 30 days, we'll be able to know, what your utilization is, how many kilowatts we're delivering per day, when most of your charging is happening, and then, with your existing energy management system, we can tailor it to make sure we're optimizing and reducing, the loads that are in peak demand. So I like that part. I like solar, battery, everything comes together. Your building's being efficient, you're being green, and you're just being efficient with the resources that you have. So that's the goal here.
Okay, I'm going to take it. Are you done looking?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to take it from the micro scale and then from the larger scale in terms of the United States. But on a micro scale, I think exactly what you're saying. The beauty of it is that you can actually save money. Once you've installed the infrastructure, you're charging from solar during the day, and you're storing that energy, and you'll pay less for that energy than you would, working with the utility, because you got the energy for free essentially. On a larger scale, in terms of integration with the grid, and smart charging, everybody knows, I think, that power is cheaper and more abundant at night, and that's hopefully when we're all charging. The majority of us are charging, which makes sense. And General Motors and some of the, I'm not sure if General Motors was, but a lot of the auto industry has invested in a company called ChargeScape. I know they're doing business around the country, especially in Texas, where there's an abundance of wind power at night. I mean, it's going all night because the wind is actually more at night. And what they're doing is installing chargers. They're working on relationships with people, not only individuals but businesses, with charging, so that they're controlling how quickly that charging. At the time of the charging. So let's say everyone comes. You leave the office, or you get home, or you're plugging in at the end of the day in the office at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock or whatever time it is, 7 p.m. And then if everybody does that, then everyone gets fully charged between 6 p.m. and like 1 p.m. And 1 a.m. right? And that's not really good for balancing the grid. So what they do is they say, okay, plug it in, and we'll control over that 12-hour period the time at which the energy goes to the cars. We'll make sure you get the full charge by the morning, but you're just gonna balance out the grid is the idea behind that. And they're investing a lot in that, especially areas where there's an abundance of energy that needs the load balancing.
No, all very good points. The only other thing I'll add, and it's a relatively emerging technology, but the possibility of vehicle to grid power or vehicle to load power, and using that EV battery as one of the ways of leveling out loads. I think a lot of people have probably seen the commercials for the Ford Lightning, where it shows the vehicle actually powering someone's house. So right now there are models out there that do allow vehicle to load or vehicle to house. So it's not directly connected to the grid, but if you have a power outage, you could power your refrigerator, your air conditioner, just as an example. But a lot of utilities and industry groups are currently working through some of the standards and technologies that would be required to actually put that power back into the grid. So interesting technology to keep an eye on. Let's see, John or Julie, have we had any other questions pop up?
No, there's nothing else in the Q&A.
Oh, there's one more, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Is there any risk that after I switch my company's vehicles from diesel to electric, other zero emissions technology may make my EV fleet obsolete.
Can I take that?
Yeah, please.
I think maybe over the very, very long term, but right now the real beauty of EVs is that the infrastructure is here. We all have electric. We're all plugged in. That's why the hydrogen fuel cells didn't work, is because you had to build a whole other charging network. So I think in the time of the life cycle value of that fleet that you purchase, I don't think you have anything to worry about.
One thought I'll just add on the hydrogen topic. I think, for heavy duty vehicles, think, a transit fleet, there may be some early use cases where hydrogen could make sense. They don't really exist in the light duty fleet. Like Andy said, a couple automakers have tried it, and the distribution infrastructure just wasn't there. But if you're a large enough fleet to own your own distribution infrastructure, then it can at times make sense. But I think for a light duty fleet, no risk of an EV fleet being obsolete.
We have another question in the chat, which is, what about regulation around EV charger installation and any support provided by local government?
That's a good question. Logan, I imagine you deal with this from time to time. Would you like to take a stab at this?
The local governments, the ones I've dealt with, it's been most of them throughout the country. They're supportive of it. Some of them haven't seen a lot of it, so they get confused with level 1, 2, or 3. So when I come in and I say I'm doing a level 2 project, they think of the Tesla DC fast chargers and they think it's a much bigger project than it is. So there's a little bit of education we see there, but most of them have some kind of mandate or some kind of gentle nudge to work with us and work with the EV projects. But typical timeline, just anytime you're doing any permitting, it's 3 to 4 months is what we're seeing with permitting and getting through that process. So the biggest regulation that makes it difficult, which I understand it, is ADA. There's some jurisdictions that require you to have a certain number of ADA accessible chargers. And a lot of times trying to line up where the power is, where the parking is, and where ADA parking is becomes pretty expensive. So we've had some projects that just because of that, it doubled the installation costs and we weren't able to do them. But that's the biggest regulatory thing that I worry about is ADA accessible charging.
Can I ask a question? Probably for Logan. In terms of infrastructure for the location, the business that you might be going to, are you finding in most cases that you have to have in many cases where you have to heavy up the electric there, or are there solutions?
Power. Yeah, I would say less than 25% of our projects need to do a power upgrade.
Okay.
If you're doing a level 3 charging, obviously all of them would need. If you're doing a DC fast charger, almost all of them need a power upgrade. But for level 2 charging, your typical hotel where we're doing 4 chargers, there's enough capacity at the property. Same with offices. So yeah, less than 25% of our projects are we having to work with utilities.
Okay, but
and the other thing with the chargers, the chargers real quick. Sorry, the chargers are all self-metered, so you don't need to install a new meter. The software and the hardware on the charger meters, so you know exactly what the utilization is. So we don't have to work with utilities to get a new meter installed.
Okay. And what if there were, let's say, the hotel wanted 12 chargers, level 2?
Yeah, I would say once you get over 6 chargers, depends, but yeah, once you get over 8 chargers, most of them are going to need new power. It also depends on how many chargers they need and the speed at which they need, right? If you're installing, 20 dedicated chargers at a multifamily where they can literally be very, very slow chargers because it's a dedicated charger, then, that's much different than 20 shared chargers that are going to be, if I'm putting 20 chargers in a property with 500 parking spots where they're going to be filtered in and out and people are expecting a 3 to 4 hour charge, then I'm gonna need power obviously for that. So rule of thumb for us is if it's shared chargers and we're putting in more than 8, we're gonna need power. With dedicated, we'll get up to 20 chargers without adding power.
Okay.
Difference, just so people know, shared and dedicated. Dedicated charger is a tenant or somebody is paying to have access to that charger and it's only theirs. And when they park, it's in their parking spot, they plug in their vehicle and it's there for 24 hours. That can operate much slower than at an office where you're putting 6 chargers that people are gonna coming in and out of. And the way that we incentivize people to move their car is there's an idle fee. So after their car is fully charged, most of the time they'll have a 30-minute grace period, and then they're told to move their car. They're notified on the app, and if they don't move their car, they're charged a fee as if they were charging.
How punitive?
If not, people would never move the charge. Yes, sorry, what'd you say?
How punitive is that fee typically?
It's enough to make them move their car, but not enough for them to hate EVs. You know.
Okay, well, good to know.
So that's, yeah. I mean, we work with hotels. Some people want it to be really steep because they're like, hey, this charger, you know, we need you out of the seat as soon as, you know. Others, it tends to be, you know, a couple dollars an hour, you know.
Right.
So it's, you know, you're not going to leave your car there for 4 or 5 hours, you know.
Right.
Great. Thank you both. Fantastic insights. Before we close the webinar out, do we have any other questions in the chat? All right.
Nothing
I turn
in
it
the
over to
Q&A.
Stephanie.
Thanks. I can move us towards wrapping up. Thank you again for your presentations and your insights. It's really exciting to hear about new and different models, resources, and how others are driving green solutions at different properties. So we want to share one other county program, and this is for Charge Up Fairfax. And this program focuses on community associations, so HOAs, nonprofit organizations, places of worship, to help them install EV infrastructure for their residents, for their guests, and provides the technical support and funding for those installations. So to date, we've worked with over 20 community associations, and we're really excited to share that the application period has just reopened this week for community associations. So we're sharing it here. We want to enhance the reach of this program and ask our partners to share it further with community associations that may be interested. And you can find more information on our website for Charge Up Fairfax. You can go to the next slide. And lastly, here's our link to Green Business Partners. So we hope to engage further with you all joining us. You can follow us on LinkedIn to stay connected, to stay up to date with our other program offerings, and look out for an email with today's presentation and the recording. And yeah, thank you again, everyone, our participants, our panelists, for an informative session. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.